Let's begin work on this image, what I call the eyes habit. I want to work on her eyes with a little bit of dodge and burn, so let's go ahead and make them bigger. It's big enough. Her eyes are fine. She has beautiful eyes. What I want to do is make the white areas a little bit whiter. That's my goal. Correspondingly, make the pupils a little bit darker, or the irises actually. A lot of times, if you really want to draw attention to something in terms of contrast, is you make something light, but then you make something correspondingly close to it, a little bit darker. Really draws the eyes. But I'm going to show you a technique of dodging and burning that has absolutely nothing to do with the dodge and burn tools. Let's start by coming over here into our layers palette. Let me bring it over here so everybody can see this. We need to make a new layer. We're going to come down here and click this button, but before you click it, hold down the Alt key. That's the Option key on a Mac. When you Alt click, it will open up the dialog box for a new layer. Give it the name Dodge and Burn. But we're not done. Change the blending mode to overlay. I call this the Dodge and Burn blending mode, called overlay. Leave the opacity at 100%, but this became available. Fill with neutral color. Select that button, click OK. We now have a brand new layer full of that color laying on top of our image and nothing is happening. Why? Because that's a neutral gray and we're using a blending mode called overlay. We go back to normal. There you go. Overlay says if it's using a perfectly neutral tone, and it is, it's an exact 128 for RGB, it won't do anything to the image. However, if you now paint on that layer of gray with a darker shade of gray or a lighter, it will correspondingly darken or lighten the area. If we come over here and pick up our paintbrush right there, and we start with black, I'll click this little button right here to reverse our colors. You can also use the letter X on your keyboard to do the same thing. I'm going to use that brush right over here and just paint with black. Now I'm painting on that gray. It will begin to darken, overly so, but it will begin darkening areas. Let me press undo. If I decide to paint with white, so I'll click that button again, it will correspondingly lighten areas of the image. In a sense, a dodge and burn effect. Let me press undo. Here's your goal. I want you to take this image and I want you to very carefully paint out the white areas of her eye with the color white. We're going to come down here. Again, we are on the dodge and burn layer. Don't forget that. Use a small brush, and I want you to get in here, and I want you to very carefully outline just the white areas of her eye. Now, through the magic of a computer, rather than watching me for the next couple of minutes paint these areas out, I'm going to go ahead and stop and come back again. I'll cut that part out. But when I come back, I will have both eyes perfectly painted out with the color white. Again, let me show you what I've done so far in those eyes, and I want you to do the same thing. Right, I'm back. Scary, isn't it? If you turn this off, there it is. And of course, if we turn that on and off, you can see the before and the after. Kind of reminds me, if you ever watched the show Stargate, the aliens on that show had glowing eyes, and this kind of reminds me of that. Let's take her down a couple of pegs. Obviously, those do not look natural. In fact, they looked rather alien. What do? This is where we play with opacity. Opacity controls how much of the overlay effect with the white impact the eyes. And if we come to opacity right here, just click on the word opacity and drag. That's all you have to do now. As you can see, we can begin a little bit of downsizing of these things, make them look a little bit better. Maybe something like that. Very subtle. There's not a lot going on here. I just want to lighten them up a little bit. Anything more than that, they will look unnatural. Let's do one more thing. Let's get back into where we can see them. I do want to darken the pupils up a little bit. Let's try this. If you use a full black, it's really going to make them dark. I don't want a full black. So I'm going to come over here to my swatches palette and just choose one of these colors in here. Now, the darker, the more dark it's going to be. I'm going to use about a 70% or so gray right here. I click it here, it changes the color over here, obviously. And then very carefully again, what we'll do is pick up our paintbrush and we'll get into these areas. And this will be a little bit easier since they're more rounded on the inside. And as you can see, it's very subtle effect. But I'm very slightly, just very slightly, darkening up the pupils of those eyes. Again, not a whole lot. You don't really want to do a whole lot when it comes to facial features, unless you really do want an alien. In that case, go for it. We can always turn this off again and see what we've done so far. And see, it's not very much. Not much at all. But what that's doing is it's forcing those areas to get just a little bit darker. Not much. And again, we can turn this on and off to see the before and the after. Take her down to a more palatable size. And we've effectively done non-destructive dodging and burning using a blank layer full of a neutral gray and the overlay blending mode. Control.